he didn't invite me to the shadi. Just done. Not talking to him again. It's like he never.
Sometimes the people that you're closest to, you strain those relationships more. You add more pressure to those relationships.
People are not opening up. People are keeping things to themselves, right? And probably because the fear that you might get judged.
He had told me, don't say my name because they're gonna, they're not gonna let me in. I'm like, no, this community is not like that.
And you can ask me any question you want. I'm not gonna go.
Assalamu alaikum. We're back with another episode for the AZH podcast. Today we are joined by Jafar Rizvi, who is a former president for Idara-e-Jaferia. And Jafar is an amazing member of our community who is currently attending hawza. And the hawza is online, right, Jafar?
Yeah.
And Jafar, first question I have for you is, being a person who grew up in this community, what are some of the challenges that you faced being a Muslim Shia, being a part of a minority, in this entire context that we go through, living and being Muslim in America? What are some of the challenges that you face?
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. I begin in the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the all-beneficent, the all-merciful, and may He send His blessings on the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi and his pure progeny of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. And first and foremost, I'd like to sincerely thank you, my dear brother Zohair and Adil Bhai, bahut bahut shukriya aapko. Thank you very much just for this opportunity. Very, very humbled, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continue to bless you guys for this amazing effort.
Thank you for your time.
It's truly a privilege, and may you be successful in all of your endeavors, inshallah. So I think the biggest challenge initially is just understanding kind of like where you belong. Having people that you can relate to as a Muslim, especially if, obviously if you're the only Muslim in school, for example, right? Like I was the only Shia that was in my school. So I didn't really have like a lot of other Shias. There weren't many other Muslims down in like Southern Maryland. And if there were Ahl Sunnat, no problem. So I was really blessed to have the Idara community, because that really gave me that sense of belonging, people I could relate to, the same, beliefs, same values. And that was a really big part, because Idara was all that I ever knew. So I would say, alhamdulillah, I'm really blessed, because a lot of those challenges weren't necessarily faced by me personally. And that was really good, because I had people I could talk to, my friends that I could relate to, and you had a lot of pride, being Shia. Was in school, during 9/11, like a lot of people, you'd get the typical, he's a terrorist and stuff like that. But you kind of just brush it off. It's always ignorance, right? It's just people who don't necessarily understand Islam. And when you are able to talk to them, same common thing, right? Like people would always ask, like, oh, you're fasting. I say, yeah, I'm fasting. And what do they always ask you? It's like, not even water, right? So they would say, for example, hey, you know what? I feel bad for you, man. Just go ahead and eat. I'm not going to tell your parents. I was like, I'm not doing it for my parents, right? Like that's not the goal, right? So it's initially, I think the biggest challenge is if you don't necessarily understand why you're Muslim, it becomes more difficult. But being blessed with a great community kind of helped me have that pride, if you will, as a Muslim. So
going back to that racism aspect, I'm sure like if you going through that time of childhood when I was it was my freshman year in high school when 9/11 happened, right? So. But for me, like racism wasn't a thing until I actually 4 or 5 years later when I made 2-3 years later when I made a trip to Maryland. Actually, my first experience with racism was in Maryland. I came down, I was interning at a TV station in high school, and we came here to film something. And when we came here to film something, we stopped at a rest stop, and there was a guy wearing a shirt that says, Muslims get out of my country, or something along those lines. And that was my first. He didn't say anything to me, right? But just walking past me and just giving me a look, right? Like that was my first experience of racism. But that does have to affect your psyche, right? Like how does that?
No, absolutely. So it's interesting. Like just looking at me, it kind of throws people off, because they can't necessarily tell I'm Muslim or Desi. So even it's funny. I look white, right? So in any community, not Idara, but I'm just saying, people like, well, he's not like fully desi, right? So like he's not, And then with them, I don't really like scream Muslim. So I was kind of, I won't say blessed, but kind of like blessed a little bit in that way.
You were protected, basically.
Yeah. I was a little protected for sure.
Coming to that, since you have a diverse background, right? So your dad is Pakistani, and your mom is American. How hard it was to balance both the sides and still stick on to the values and the religion itself?
Sure. So, I mean, some days we have nahari and some days we had hamburgers, right? We would always try to balance it, which is good. I think, again, that's where the Idara community really helped a lot because I feel like fully desi. But it's very interesting because I know, my dad, like, may Allah bless him, he kind of would take that role of like the traditional kind of auntie role, you know what I mean? Because like, oh, like, beta, did you eat? Or, like, when are you coming home? My mom, for example, right? Like on the American side, it's not like this. Like, you're okay? Yeah, I'm good. It's sort of different styles of parenting. But it was good because I kind of got like both worlds. But again, I feel like Idara raised me, right? Like every family at the Idara, like was, that family that kind of raised. So it was interesting. It's definitely different. It wouldn't be the traditional Desi upbringing. But it was interesting to see another side of practicing, if you will. Yeah.
You're a father of 2 now, mashallah.
Alhamdulillah.
Which style did you adopt, or is there a hybrid?
Yeah, I think a little more desi than I maybe I'd anticipated. A little bit more, kind of, better you need to brush your teeth, like wake up, like where are you going, like make sure you eat, you haven't eaten enough. But then trying to also balance that because it's important to.
So it's more hamburgers this time?
Yeah, man. No, well, there's a lot more Hyderabadi, Hyderabadi cooking. So trying to get more Karachi cooking in
Talking about Idara, that's of course a very significant part of your life, of our lives, right? And you got yourself involved in working with youth. How did you end up, in that position? And what do you think are some of the challenges that youth is facing currently in the West?
So it's a beautiful question. I think it also comes back to like what Zohair Bhai was saying too. Idara was so easy to kind of find a sense of identity. Because like growing up in school, I would just kind of go to school and come home, right? So I didn't have a lot of friends in middle school, high school growing up, didn't like have a lot of like, sports or anything. My extracurriculars was being at Idara. Like that's kind of like what you look forward to, just being there, seeing your friends there, attending majalis. So you just kind of like, I would see a lot of the people who would work so hard and you just kind of inspire to be like them. Like, like the people who would always, serve the chai, be there early, set up, working in the parking lot. Like when I was like younger, like, man, I want to be like them, So then just having someone take you under their wing, because the biggest thing for the youth is they want to feel valued. They want to feel important, right? So the community kind of did that for me and for a lot of my friends, that we felt, important, like you're a part of this community and you're a big part of it. So that kind of inspired me to be like, look, I want our youth to feel the same way. You know what I mean? And I think that's one of the biggest challenges that we see, like nationally, right? Like in every center, is just the youth want to make sure that they feel important, that their voice matters, that they have value. And I think sometimes what happens is if they feel disconnected, it's because they feel like, well, yeah, bache hai is not, what's he going to value? But we see now, mashallah, I mean, if you have a 10, 11-year-old, we bring them and say, hey, man, stand outside in the parking lot, bring the tables, do this. They just want to feel like they're part of something.
Yep. And they're important.
They're important.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the first thing. And then second thing is also just it's a balance, but not treating them necessarily like a child, right? Like, but at the same time, the elders are super important, right? Like there has to be a balance where you take both sets of ideas, if that kind of makes sense, So, yeah.
Before this, I don't mind sharing. Like before this, we recorded the podcast with the DMV Shia Sports guys. That's why I'm wearing the same clothes right now.
They're doing great work also.
So what I said to them was, you guys weren't privy to this because you were in the other room, but what I said to them was, one of our goals in the community should be that every youth in the community has somebody that they can talk to. It could be somebody like an older cousin, or it doesn't need to be somebody as long as somebody outside their immediate family,
Yeah.
right? Like that can relate to them on topics that they feel comfortable talking to them about anything under the sun. I think that's an excellent goal for our community to have, and it makes a huge difference, right? Like I have an amazing mentor in my life, Baz Bhai from New Jersey, right? He's part of NJAA. And he literally, I was working at his and Hassan Bhai's Sprint store. And, you know, he's like, you know, what are you doing with your life? I was like, I don't know. He's like, he sent me home. I was supposed to work there the whole day. He's like, I'll look after the store. You go home, come up with a 5-year plan for your life, and come back.
Really?
Oh, wow.
So the next day, I went to the store. I had a 5-year plan for what I wanted to do. He was like, this is all BS. Actually think about it. And then he sat down with me, and he kind of fine-tuned the whole thing. And ever since, my life has been completely different. I said, last time I saw him, I said to him, like, I wish I met you earlier in life. My life would be maybe different. Alhamdulillah, I'm incredibly blessed.
Wow.
Alhamdulillah, I'm incredibly blessed. So thank God. But I feel like if a Baz Bhai was in my life earlier, I would be more blessed maybe, right?
Wow.
Or I might have gotten to where I am now earlier in my life. But that's why people like that are so important within our community, right? Like, and how do we get there though, Jafar?
So beautifully said. One of the most important relationships in life in general, and that Islam focuses on highly, is your friend circle. You have to have someone who you can look up to and someone who shares the same values, who's looking out for you. But those values have to be values that you share, right? So that, because they're going to try to set you in the right direction. I think that honestly, the biggest thing is the youth are looking for that, and people want to help. Yeah. One of the things we want to try and start, inshallah, in the future is a mentorship program. Yeah. I know it's hard, you know, everyone's always busy and stuff like that, but you have to just basically, the thing is, oftentimes what happens is the person who needs not help necessarily, but like you, Abbas Bhai took an interest in you, you know? So you need someone who can take an interest.
Owning people.
Owning people.
The other guy.
But doing it in a way where he didn't come off and make you feel like, look, I'm better than you.
Right, exactly. That's important.
You had already his respect. Yep. And he had your respect. Yeah. So that's the important thing. So oftentimes if I see a kid and he's going to be doing, you know, maybe he's using bad language, maybe he's doing something I shouldn't, and I come and I just start yelling at him, maybe he'll stop, that's fine. But I know when I turn around, he starts right back up. So it's like that's not necessarily the right approach. So the mentorship has to be, it's like I almost look at you as an equal, honestly. I see potential in you. I see value in you. So I would say anybody can do it. Just don't ever underestimate the power of going to someone younger than you and maybe giving them salams. Yeah. Of course, you know, Islamically, it should not be that way. Yeah. You know, the youth should always go to the elders. But it makes a big difference if an elder goes to a child, the child's like, wait a second, like I matter, I'm important, you know? And that should gear them, because eventually, you know, they should change their position, right? But that's the biggest thing. Just go and say, hey, you have 5 minutes, I need your help. Because sometimes the kids will look at me and they'll be like, wait, I don't know who you are. Like, why are you asking me? Doesn't matter. This is everybody's community. Everybody's Idara, for example, or anything. Hey, you have an interest in cars. Why don't you come and help me, you know, learn about cars, being a mechanic or something like that. So I would say that's one thing, is just treating everybody like that, giving them a chance, you know.
And we have so much potential in our community, so much resource.
And it's such a diverse community too.
Yeah, right? The skill sets are amazing.
Yeah. We have doctors, we have engineers, we have all the
business owners.
Yeah, we have all
bringing everybody to the same platform.
Yeah,
right.
And work towards the same goal. I think that should be our number one goal. I think.
Yeah, I mean, Idara is like what I was saying, right? Idara is blessed with a diverse skill set. You'll find every single person, anything that you want to achieve in life, somebody within Idara. We're blessed to have somebody in Idara who can help us get there, right? So like taking advantage of some of those opportunities that we have available and passing those on to the kids in the community is huge.
It's just believe in someone. I think that's what the youth really want. They just need guidance, you know. They just need someone to say, hey, you matter.
And do you think that's the reason why they're struggling? There's so many mental health issues, anxiety. And do you think there's a role of faith that can heal them up? Like, I've seen so many people. What do you think? How can we approach that issue? It's growing.
No, this is it's a really important question, and it's something that is very close to my heart because I've had real close experiences with this. I think the biggest thing is, and again, this is with the community globally. First and foremost, it's understanding the true definition of Islam, really high level. So what do we mean? The main point of Islam is to get the closest possible proximity to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay. Then you ask, why did Allah create you? There's multiple reasons in the Quran. The main reason, Allah says, I created you to shower mercy on you. That's the main reason. I created you to worship me. I created you to be tested. The more you worship me, the more tests you go through, the more mercy I shower on you. Why do I mention this? Because somebody who's oftentimes, there's different reasons, but if you're going through depression, anxiety, different things, generally speaking, it's a sense of saying, do I really matter? I don't matter to someone, right? I'm not noticing my own self-worth. Islam says you have potential within you that makes you the possibility to be the greatest of God's creation. And I created you because of how much love I have for you. So I think mental health and faith, what happens is if we remember that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who loves us the most, He believes in us and knows what's within us. The problem is we don't know the potential within ourselves. So it's all about connecting back to Allah and saying, hey, no matter what you've done in your life, no matter what you've been through, no matter how neglectful you may have been, as long as you're still breathing, you have hope. The door of Allah is open. You can come back to me. I will never, ever turn my back on you. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, as long as you're still breathing, you always have a chance to come back to me. I will never turn my back on you. The problem is, and this isn't so much about mental health, but the problem is oftentimes we don't appreciate Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm saying this for myself. So with mental health, obviously it's very simplistic. It's a lot more complicated than that. But generally speaking, faith allows you to understand how valuable you are. How important you are in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How do we learn that? We learn that from Quran and Ahlul Bayt. That's where, I remember one time I was really feeling down. I was really feeling down, wasn't having a good day, really feeling like, just lost, man, completely lost. I was off from school. I decided to just swing by Jummah, just stopped by a Jummah one day. Wasn't really going to Jummah. It was one khutbah, man. It was just beautiful. It was just the normal things you hear about in Jummah, about taqwa, and it was so inspirational. It was exactly what I needed. Exactly what you needed. It just rejuvenates the heart. Now, that's one aspect, of course, oftentimes people will say, oh, I'm feeling depressed. They'll say, okay, read dua, 100%. There may be obviously times where you do need to see a mental health professional. And I think respectfully, that is something that we and our communities need to promote more. It's nothing to be ashamed about, You shouldn't feel ashamed about the fact that you have to seek help from a mental health professional.
And I think that sometimes we look at alims, maulanas, or resident alims or muftis on the other side within our mosque as the people that are kind of those mental health professionals that are helping us out.
Absolutely.
But I agree with you 100%, right? They can only help you to a certain extent, right? And I think it's the responsibility of the maulanas and the muftis to figure out that, okay, this is where my skill set ends and then this is where I need you to refer to a professional.
Absolutely.
I think it also goes back to how disconnected we are as a community. The oldest profession in the world history is storytelling. People used to tell stories to each other, opening up self-knowledge. That's a huge source of self-knowledge. When I'm telling you my story, you might find yourself in my story. Right? So I think we kind of disconnected. People are not opening up. People are keeping things to themselves. Right? Yeah. And probably because the fear that you might get judged. Yeah, right? Absolutely. So, I mean, you guys are
ashamed. Yeah. I'm the only one who's going through it. Nobody else will understand what I'm going through. Yeah. The reality is that I remember one time, Marhum Maulana AZH, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless his soul, he said that,
Huge loss, man.
huge loss. May Allah elevate his status and grant his family and everyone a lot of patience. He said on the member that I know what you're going through. Sitting here, you're coming here to the Majlis of Imam al-Hussein Islam, your heart is broken. You're going through things that you may feel that nobody else will understand. But know that, there is hope, paraphrase. In the sense that when you see someone, you never know something as simple as what a smile can do for that person, I remember different situations of going through mental health problems. It really comes back to having someone in your life that makes you feel important. That you matter. You've messed up, but it's okay. Yeah. So I think that like everything, there's a balance. Islam plays a pivotal role in every aspect of your life, right? The spiritual health, the physical health. But Islam also recognizes that there are circumstances or scenarios where you need to get, just like Islam says, if you're going through a physical condition, make dua, absolutely. Make dua that you heal physically. But Islam will also tell you, in addition to that, go and seek the help of a physician, a doctor. For example, Islam will not tell you, if I have a blood clot, just to make dua the blood clot goes away, but don't do anything for it, right? So your mental health it's also the same thing. There's different reasons. It's a very big conversation. But again, I think the core of it oftentimes is not understanding our value, understanding if we realize what Islam thinks of us, that goes a long way. Connecting to Ahlul Bayt al-Muslim, connecting to the Quran, finding people who make you feel special. But then in addition to that, not having that fear or being ashamed of going to a psychiatrist and talking to them and seeking help and seeking advice. But of course, under the guidance of, one of the things we have to be very careful about is at the end of the day, how you live your life should always be under the guidance of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. So it's important to get that professional help, but also kind of couple the advice that's being given to make sure that it's in line with our belief system, if that makes sense.
Are the Maulanas and the sheikhs and for our brothers and on the other side of in the other sect, the muftis, are they getting trained on where does, like what I said earlier, where does the line end for my expertise, and where does the line end for an expert in the field, right? Or marriage counseling. I think there's two types of things, right? There's marriage counseling that people go to the sheikh for, or there's mental health counseling. You're dealing with an issue. From a lot of friends that I have, they're like, I have nobody. I'm not talking about nobody in particular, but they'll come to me and say, we have kids coming to our communities talking about kids, going through friends who are identifying themselves as homosexual or LGBTQ and all that sort of stuff. So kids are dealing with these issues, but sometimes these issues are not something that a mufti or a sheikh or a maulana can kind of help you with.
No, it's a beautiful point. Unfortunately, I'm not as qualified, but from what I've heard, the beauty is that hawza in particular, what oftentimes the layman like myself may not understand, hawza is actually a law school. So the fundamental thing that's taught in hawza is Islamic fiqh, is jurisprudence. So a lot of the stuff you're mentioning, now the beauty is that Islam as a religion covers everything. It covers every aspect of life. But the focus in hawza is the halal, the haram, the wajibat, and the details of Islamic law. Now you can seek teachers that'll help, teach you ethics, for example, tariq, they'll teach you, for example, but the main thing you learn is fiqh and Quran. I think what's happening now is there's definitely a push, especially here, and possibly in the hawza as well, is that especially if you're going to be a resident alim of a community, that there is kind of that guidance counseling. But as far as I know, and I would definitely go to Maulans who are a lot more qualified, actual scholars, I don't think there's a lot of training regarding, guidance counseling or psychiatric training, for example, marriage counseling, that they're not necessarily trained in these. Now, again, because of the power of Islam and the power of the teachings of the Quran and the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, and that's the most important teachings that we have, right? So especially when it comes to marriage, how we should deal with issues. Ahlul Bayt al-Islam have talked about everything and what Islam expects us in regards to how we treat our husbands, our wives, etc. But I think that one of the areas that maybe could be explored is looking at that line and saying, this is where we can definitely help you, especially when it comes to mental health, I think, more so. The anxiety, the depression, the LGBTQ, like you said, because it can be very challenging. I mean, there are things like I grew up here. I went to school here. But even I'm surprised now by some of the stuff that we're hearing. Like it would never, I don't know how to talk about it. So it can be very hard for, someone who maybe is growing up in the East. They may not have even heard of some of these terms. So I think that's one of the areas that they're trying to go in. But traditionally, maybe I think the focus was more so on, is on the jurisprudential aspect.
What hawza are you? So let's just,
Sure.
What hawza are you attending?
So Alhamdulillah, Allah's mercy, there's an online seminary based out of Dearborn, Michigan, Al-Hujjah Islamic Seminary.
Is it run by Hasnan Rizvi, brother?
Close. So he also has Islamic House of Wisdom as well. This is by the Qazwini family. So it's under the guidance mostly of Sayyid Muhammad Baqir al-Qazwini and Sayyid Ahmad al-Qazwini. They're the main teachers, especially Sayyid Muhammad Baqir. So it's, if you're in Dearborn, you can attend the classes. But every class is available online. So they have students all over the world. It's amazing. All over the world that attend.
And how long have you been a student?
So I've been a student much longer than I have anticipated, and that's only that's because of me, life, alhamdulillah, blessings getting in the way. But it's cool because it's your own pace. It's as you go, and it's cool because it has the option. You can say, look, I'm doing this because I want to become a Maulana, so I want to study, and then I want to go to Qum Najaf. Or your intention can be, I want to learn so that I'm speaking as like a Zakir, for example. Or I just want to gain Islamic knowledge. That's it. So it's a college level. It's college level classes. I mean, nothing will take the place of Qum Najaf. That experience is a different. It's a divine experience. What this helps you is take a lot of the preliminary classes, and it is also a qualification where you can go and you can possibly take the exams in Najaf and Qum if you want to pursue wearing imama, for example. But it's just been so good to learn the details. I remember Islamic Law 1. It's like the 40 classes or something. So I came in and I'm like, okay, Islamic Law 1, it's not going to be that complicated. I know about Islam, all this. The first 5 classes were just about the different types of water in Islam. Wow. Like, what? We didn't get to wudu until lesson 19. I'm like, different types of water? What do you mean? And then there's qalil water, and there's well water, and there's qur water, and what the definition of qur is. So it was very humbling. It was very humbling because this has a different purifying quality than this one, for example. This is what you do in this scenario. This is this definition of water. And then you start to move to taharat. I'm like, wow. Wudu was like 19 lectures. So it's very humbling. So I said, man, you want to learn more. So what is this? It's a blessing of the Ahlul Bayt al-Islam.
I need to consult a Maulana about the water coming out of my my faucets right now.
Yeah, definitely. No, and it's very interesting. And they'll tell you, okay, well, it's connected, it's core, but then it breaks. It's very interesting. So absolutely. So I would highly recommend it. It's geared towards anyone and everyone. All the classes you can imagine.
Yeah, that was my next
Anything
question. Because how can
in.
I, or a person like,
Before we even get to that, what's your motivation behind,
So I'd always, from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy, I'd always wanted to go to Qum. I always wanted to go to Qum. And I think I was 16, I talked to one of the scholars, one of the speakers. He said, look, a lot of people go to Qum and Najaf. But the first thing I ask them when they come back is what qualifications do you have? So what he had recommended, this speaker, is maybe get an education first here, get some skill sets, go to Qum, go to Najaf, come back. That way, you can still, you have something to fall back on. And I wish I had taken that advice. Alhamdulillah, I was blessed. After I finished my education, I got married. It's very, I'll be honest, it's very difficult. Once you get married, especially unless you make that intention known, hey,
yeah,
I'll get married, but I'm planning to go to Qum. right? So, or I'm planning to go to Najaf. So I would highly recommend two options. Now with technology, you can get this education. You can get a preliminary. Again, there's no replacement for Qom and Najaf. But it's a good starter. It's a good introduction. I just wanted to learn more about Islam. I was very inspired by a lot of the great scholars and Maulanas that we have. And just the more people learn about Islam, the more you fall in love with it, right? That hadith attributed to Imam Rida alayhi salam, that if people heard our words, they'll come to us, right? So whatever you want to learn about, aqaid, tariq, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa biography, there's like 5 years just Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa biography. So over like 100 classes. So it's so detailed. That's one of the things I'd kind of recommend. It's just you can take any class. There's a class on Najj al-Balagha. Say I just want to learn more about the Najj. You just learn Quran, Quranic sciences. Okay, and then you just start to connect. So yeah, it's taken me a while, but that's on me. I just need to pick it back up.
What are your goals other than just obviously learning about Islam?
Yeah.
But am I going to see an imama on
No.
your head, inshallah, in like 10, 12 years time?
No, inshallah, if I become worthy of doing so, inshallah. I think the biggest thing is just being able, number one, to have that knowledge for myself. And if from Allah's mercy and Allah's blessings, being able to help someone else learn about Islam in a way that I can help them relate, and that's the biggest thing is just speaking. Because one of the things I realize is, I want to give majalis, but majalis is sacred. You need qualifications. And that's why I'm still trying to, work towards that, inshallah. But it's important to be taught and under the right teachers. So I think the biggest goal is to complete Al-Hujjah Seminary. They have like 5-6 years worth of courses. But to really specialize in aqaid and a belief system, because the belief system is the most important part. And then teach and lecture. The more opportunities from Allah to lecture is really what I'm looking to do, inshallah.
But for those who don't know, he's already in that phase when you're delivering lectures on different parts of the United States. So how this whole hawza thing is helping you, shaping and increasing your knowledge, especially when you're on the mimbar, it's breathtaking, right? So how does that help you? Yeah.
I think one of the things that I asked one of my teachers this. I said, look, a lot of it is I just want to copy you, because the beauty is that Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam have done all the hard work. So we just take from them. When you just expose someone to the teachings of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, to the Quran, I think what it's done is it's opened my eyes. There's so much out there, because the more you study Islam, the more you realize how much you don't know.
Yeah, I think that's not just Islam. That's with everything.
Everything. Right? Yeah, it's so true. Like
Socrates, you say, like, all I know that I know nothing.
And it can be very overwhelming, quite honestly, because again, when you like you said, any subject, but when you look at Islam, there's aqaid. So they'll say, for example, I'm learning about Tawheed. I said, man, Tawheed is for kids. But the first thing you learn, Allah ek. Tawheed is one of the most complicated things in the Islamic belief system. Not complicated in the sense of like it's hard to understand. It's so detailed. The first sermon of Imam Ali Najj al-Balagha, if you read that first paragraph, you have to read it 40 times to understand it. It's beautiful.
One of the best books that I read on Islam was, I think it's Sheikh Tusi's book on Tawheed that Maulana Ali Rizvi translated, right? I think it's Sheikh Tusi, yeah. And that book just kind of fed my hunger to go seek more knowledge, right? It's just like the topic of Tawheed is so spread, right? Like it kind of ingrains itself into every single thing. And that was just eye-opening for me, because you're 100% right. We take it for granted. Like, Tawheed. Allah, that's it. We're done.
Subhanallah, that's amazing.
And I mean, to the next question, like, you have worked with the youth for a long time, right? What measures are we taking for those who have lost the hope in this religion, right? What are we doing to bring them back? It's a serious concern.
No,
People
it's
are
a very
paying the
powerful question.
price of the migration now. The first and second generation are people I know. I'm sure Zohair know, and probably you know, that have lost entire hope. Although with entire thing there, like, you know, you have tons of knowledge there, like, you know, tons to know, but still, there are kids who have lost entire hope. They're just there for peer pressure, I guess, or they're just there for, I don't know,
Satisfy their family members.
satisfying.
Yeah.
There's fear involved or whatever. But what are we doing to bring them back?
So it's a very important question. I think there's a few things here. Number one, I would say no matter what you're going through, never ever lose connection with a community. Never. Even if you're having all the doubts in the world, still come. Still come. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always wants you back. And you never know. So I would say to the person specifically, don't ever, even if it's once a year on Ashura, even if it's once a year, that coming on the day of Ashura can always rejuvenate you. That's more from a spiritual aspect, right? That's very high level. More specifically to what you're saying, again, I think it comes back to number one, we have a responsibility to look after, and if we see someone who seems disengaged, we have to do a better job of being like, look, you can come to me, I'm not going to tell anyone, and you can ask me any question you want, I'm not going to judge you. Any question. That's very important. I will not judge you. They'll say, what do you mean? I want to ask you, can you prove to me God exists? They'll say, and if you ask that question, they'll say, how can you even ask that? That should never be. Because Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, the atheist comes, he says, I'm God. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, what does he say? Okay, no problem. Come sit, let's talk. The akhlaq. So number one, that akhlaq is essential because we're ashamed. We feel that they may feel ashamed. I'm having these questions about imamat. I'm having these questions about tawheed. I can't ask anyone. They're going to judge me. So I would say first and foremost to our parents, if you get a question that alarms you, try your best not to show it. Yeah. Say, okay, let's come and sit. Why are you having these thoughts? No problem. Let's talk about it. Because I would say like myself, you don't get many chances, you know? If you make the person feel one time bad, it's hard if they're going to come back to you.
I think the other thing is also the other side of that coin is if somebody, for example, comes to me and asks me a question and I'm not very knowledgeable on the Islamic issues.
No, you both of you are
like
very much so.
I wouldn't feel like, and my approach would be that, okay, you know, I don't know the answer to your question, but let's figure it out together.
Subhanallah.
Right? Like I think that part of it, admitting the fact that, you know what, if this person is making themselves vulnerable to you by asking you a question, and if you don't know the answer, make yourself vulnerable and say, I don't know the answer, but let's figure it out together. Because maybe by having the experience of being the older person in that relationship, you can kind of guide this person like, okay, we can find the right resources. We can go down the right path to get to the answer that will satisfy your question or your needs.
It reminds me of a incident that happened in Safin, and I think I've talked about this before as well, but there was a guy came to Imam Ali, and I think it was Jamal or Safin, right? And he said there were two different, there were Jamal, right? There were personalities, there were big personalities on both sides. And he was like, I'm confused. I don't want to be part of this. And Imam said, you know, don't look
don't look at the personalities.
Don't look at the personalities, but the attributes. But look at the attributes, and you'll find the
truth first, and then judge.
Yeah, look at what the argument is on each side.
Look at the truth first.
Exactly.
Yeah. So he let the person think. He let him free. He let him decide for himself, rather than putting him in a box where he can just think only one way. Imam never said, you know, who you're talking to, or he never reminded of the hadiths about him. He just said, okay, just sit back, relax, and just judge for yourself. So
that's an excellent point.
Both of you guys are students of history, right? Like we talk about establishing a community, engaging the youth, and all that. a thought as you guys were discussing this, a question that came to my mind was, how did the imams handle this? This is not a new issue for us, right? Like, I think having gone through that phase in my life of like, when you're a teenager until your early 20s, you question everything in front of you, and that's very natural, and I think it's also very healthy, right? But that's not new to our current age. I'm sure this also happened in the Prophet's time and the Imam's time. How did they handle that?
I think it was one of the incident I happened in the times of one of the Masumins. I don't know the name, but there was a recent convert, like revert or whatever you call it. He came to Imam. He recited the kalma. He became a Muslim. Next day, Imam's companions took him to the mosque. He prayed Fajr, and then he prayed some other salah, and then came the namaz asr time and the maghrib and isha, and then they took him to the namaz shab.
I know where this is going. Yeah.
The shab, right? The next day he was gone. He was nowhere to be found. Then the Imam complained to his companions, like, what did you do? Right? You put too much burden to the person who couldn't even bear it. Yeah. So I think that's kind of related to too much rituals, very less value. I don't know. That's how I see it. Like, too much rituals, like hundreds and hundreds of rakats but just very less value. Kids are looking at the value. Yeah. As I said, like, a lot of things they're seeking are given by the people who don't even believe in God. Right, from their shoes to their cars. It's very hard. Your take?
It's a beautiful point. One is when you're mentioning Jamal, and to what you were saying as well. In Safin, I believe they stopped Imam Ali al-Islam. A man stopped Imam al-Islam and asked him like a very seemingly simple question, like, prove to me there's one God or something like that, or the importance of Tawheed or something. And they got really mad at him. And like, we're fighting a battle. And like, you're now asking the most like simple question now. And Imam Ali said the whole reason I'm fighting the battle is for this question. So one thing is, every question that you ask, as long as it's with sincerity, which it is, there's no such thing as a stupid question. That's number one. Number two, again, like you said, the akhlaq is very fundamental here. It's very, very fundamental. The more that you feel I can ask you anything, because the more you learn, right? Knowledge is amazing. Once you start getting exposed to the teachings of Ahlul Bayt al-Muslim and the Quran, you just keep going back, right? You just keep going back. So to your point, it's all about how you present it, how you approach it. Number one. Number two, especially, for someone, let's say that they've been struggling with, maybe doing their wajibat or something. And now, if I just be like, look, you're going to go to hell. This is what's going to happen. You need to do all this. People ask, and again, this is all of us. I'm not judging anyone. One of the important nights will come. So we have to do amal. One of the first questions that always happens is, how long is it? That, it's natural, not judging. It's me. The point is that we have lost, if you ask the imams, Imam al-Islam, what do you love doing? They'll mention many things, but what was one of the things they loved doing? Dua and salat. If they were given the opportunity, now of course, did they do other fun activities? Absolutely. Why? Because their understanding of dua and their understanding of salat is different than our understanding. They never looked at it as a chore. If it wasn't wajib, they would still do it. I do it so I don't go to hell. That's it. Right? So there's I think we need to do a better job of presenting it, because if, like you said beautifully, Fajr, then Dhuhr, then Asr, okay, it's a lot, because I don't necessarily even know what I'm saying, what I'm doing, right?
I think somebody shared this with me. I don't remember where I heard this, or maybe I read this, or somebody said this to me. There's three types of people that offer namaz. One that are afraid, right? One that are doing it because they want to go to heaven. And then the third person is the person who said, God is deserving of my namaz. So I do it because he's deserving of it, right? So understand, it took me a long time, to get to that understanding, because I wasn't always performing my namazes and all of that. It takes you a while to get there, but if you're getting, just like you said, if you're getting beat over the head, that this is, you're getting you're getting guna for not doing this and that and the other, you're gonna distance yourself. I think that's what our community leaders, our older, older guys in the mosques and imam bargas all over the world need to realize that just by being stern, by being, beating people over the head about like, all right, go do matam or go do namaz or go do this or help out, that's not going to get the guy to help out, right? Like they might help out then and there, but they might not show up the next day, right? It's the more of like, what you were saying earlier, Jafar, just getting them involved, handing them responsibility.
That's it. No, and it's a great point. Physical exercise is one of the best examples that I always think of because I'm terrible at it. It's like, okay, what do they always tell you? I'm like, all right, today I'm going to get fit. But when I look at the plan, it's always like, all right, you need to drop all sugar. You have to start eating like whole wheat bread. All stuff that like, I love sugar. I don't like whole wheat bread. I don't have eggs. Okay. You also need to like walk 5 miles and do this many push-ups to get the muscle. And when I look at it, I'm just like, man, this is just too much. Like it's not going to happen. Islam is also, especially when it comes to the worship aspect, it's similar, right? How you present it. If I understand, okay, yes, you're going to have to struggle and go through this exercise, but look at the end result. That's one way to motivate. The second thing that you said, amazing point. Okay, the third reason is I'm doing it because the only one who's worthy of worship is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's back to where Tawheed comes in. Because Tawheed is so much more. It's recognizing, again, why am I here? When you understand your purpose in life, when you understand how Allah views you, it becomes, just think about it. Who had the most difficult lives in all of creation? It's the Holy 14. Yeah. Nobody has ever gone through or will ever go through what they went through. Yet who was the happiest people on this earth? How do you reconcile?
Even to the extent... even the last times Imam was saying, he was called Nafs Mutmainna, the one who was the most content.
Content. So you ask, how can an individual who's on the verge of death, no water, no food, lost his family, his companions, everything, he's content? Or Sayyidah Zainab Salam alayha says, I saw nothing but beauty. It's that understanding of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's that understanding of this potential within me. I'll always go back to that, how Allah views you. If we viewed ourselves the way that Allah views us, as much as we feel everyone loves us, that love Allah has for you, but we don't think of, because here's what I never think about this. Allah created you, okay. And say, why did Allah create you? To worship Him. Okay, wait, but Allah doesn't need my worship. So why did He create me for something that He doesn't need? Right? Okay, what is Islam about? It's about ibadat. It's about doing all the, subhanAllah, all the namaz, all the fasting, telling Allah how great He is. Allah knows how great He is, right? Why am I doing namaz? Allah wants me to worship Him for what reason? It's not for Him. It's for Him in the sense that I dedicate it for His pleasure, but He doesn't benefit. Yeah. If I pray or I don't pray, it does nothing for Allah. Doesn't make Allah greater, it doesn't lower Him. Okay, so then you have to ask yourself, okay, then why? Because that mercy, the higher levels of mercy is achieved through that ibadat. So that means that Allah loves you so much that I'm the only one who benefits.
That's a beautiful message. But what I noticed when I started praying regularly, right, that it also provided, aside from the spiritual satisfaction that you're speaking of, practically, I just felt more accomplished in my day.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
after I'm done with my Isha, I'm like, you know what? Even if I sat on the couch all day, at least I got all my 5 namaz.
You got your 5 namaz. No, absolutely.
You know what I mean?
And it's cool because it breaks it up. Like whatever I'm doing, I'm going to start this movie, going to read this book, whatever, but nope, namaz.
But here's the thing. I think a lot of people are looking at these people who are pro at namaz, pro at roza. But outside the building, that's why Imam Ali said, don't tell me how much prayer a person prays. Tell me how he deals with people. This is where we're lacking the most. Because kids are seeing people who are going to mosque in and out 24/7 is coming outside and cheating his brother. Right? Like, everything is not inside the building. So, and that's why Imam said in the end of times, there'll be beautiful mosques, empty of guidance, and that's what we are living at. I see beautiful mosque, but there's no value to it, because what kind of products are coming out of the mosque. I don't blame the mosque for. But you know what I'm saying, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So
when you finish salat, right? What do we do after we do takbir? What do? We shake each other's hands. Why do we shake each other's hands? Because you're congratulating that person on the spiritual mi'raj. Okay, now the reality is, what am I really congratulating you on? I mean, I'm asking about myself. I've done this Jamaat. Assalamu alaikum. Congratulations, you just achieved the spiritual ascension. But have I? Yeah. So, to your point, akhlaq is so fundamental in Islam. Islam, if you want to summarize it, it's all about balance. It's all about balance. I can pray as much as I want, but if I'm not doing X, Y, Z, that's not what Islam wants. I can do all the charity, all the sadaqah, everything. If I'm not praying, that's not what Islam wants. Islam is submission to what Allah wants. Again, why? Because it's what's best for me. So, I think one thing, if we understood, number one, the value of the ibadat and the value of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, and could you imagine, and I'm only talking about myself, 0.0001% of the teachings of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, how we would be, how different the world would be. And I would say now, the world itself, the beauty is there because of the people who still act in the teachings of Ahlul Bayt.
I think that's the akhlaq part of what you said is
it's not emphasized.
It's not emphasized enough, and I think if people start understanding what that really is and how important that is, then they will start also understanding how important your wajibats are. As well,
adding
right?
to that, correct me if I'm wrong, but the lying is one of the biggest sins.
One of the biggest sins is lying.
If I tell a lie, and that kind of
brings
people
together.
Two brothers together, that's the biggest ibadat. So even God, even Allah is saying that even one of those sin that is,
this can be a good thing.
It can be a good thing.
Absolutely,
right? It's conditional. Yeah. So that's how important ikhlaq and bringing
and
everybody together.
So,
yeah,
100%.
It's also the fact that akhlaq also comes into the fact, a lot of times we'll get this issue in different communities. I've been alhamdulillah blessed to be a part of very different communities across New Jersey, also in Virginia and Maryland now, and this is across the board. My sister lives in Houston. I have a lot of family in Pakistan. I have a family in England. This is across the board, issues everywhere. Oh, you didn't invite me to your majlis, I'm not gonna go. Or you didn't come to my majlis, so I'm not gonna go to your majlis. Those issues like that, right? Yeah. And those little things that you may not even speak of them, but this is in your brain, and it's churning in your brain, and it's eating away at your akhlaq, right? It is internally corrupting you by saying that, okay, just because, even if you don't voice it, you keep it within yourself, just let it go. There have been so many times, especially after moving here to Virginia, coming from Jersey. I don't know a lot of people here. I knew, maybe 10, 15 people here. I didn't even know them that well. I was close to maybe 2-3 people when I first moved here. There have been so many times that I've been to house majalises that I haven't been invited to. But I don't ever think of okay, just because this person didn't send me a text message or something, it's small as majlis, man. And I've never, in any of those experiences, the host never came to me I never invited you. How are you here?
Why did you come here? Subhanallah.
That's never been the case, right? So we need to get past those little difficulties that we encounter in our lives where it's,
So there's 2 points to what you said. Number one, you hit upon my favorite subject, which I'm going to talk about in a second, which is maqarim al-akhlaq. But really quick, one of the stations on the Day of Judgment is the weighing of deeds. Mm-hmm. There's 2 deeds that are the heaviest. The heaviest. The first is the salawat that you recite. And the second is your akhlaq. Mm-hmm. Imagine. Akhlaq is so valuable in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that it's next to salawat the heaviest deed. Not salat, not roza, none of akhlaq. Okay, now let's go to this. Laylatul Qadr is the greatest of nights, those 3 nights. There's a lot of amal. One of the recommended amal is what? Supplication of Sahifa, Imam Sajjad al-Islam. What supplication? Dua maqaram al-akhlaq. When Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa says, the only reason I've come is to perfect the morals of mankind, he says maqaram. Islam is so beautiful. There's mahasin al-akhlaq, maqaram al-akhlaq. Okay, what's mahasin al-akhlaq? You did something good for me, you got me water. Because you got me water, I'm going to get you water. It's good, it's good. You did good for me, I did good for you. Okay. Islam says, no. We can take this to the next level. This is school of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. There's maqaram. What's maqaram al-akhlaq? It's going to be extreme example, but I think you'll get it. You came, you spit in my face, I give you a hug. You're disrespectful to me, I'm respectful to you. People say, no, what do you mean? This is not... I've seen this example and we mention it. He didn't invite me to the shadi. Just done. Not talking to him again. It's like he never... Baba, he could have forgotten. Family is big now. Weddings are expensive. Give benefits of the doubt. Unfortunately, and this is human nature. See, shaitan is your external enemy. Absolutely. Shaitan cannot be blamed for everything. There's that nafs within you that also incites, right? Both. The point is what? Give benefits of the doubt. Imam Sajjad al-Islam is saying, if you read that dua, it's unbelievable. They're disrespectful, show them love. Imam Hussein al-Islam was sitting one day. They come. This man comes. He says, I'm paraphrasing, curse be on you, curse on your father. Imam Hussein al-Islam wasn't bothering anyone. He wasn't, of course not, right? He wasn't doing anything. He was just sitting minding his own business. And of course, Imam al-Islam would never do that to anyone, but you get the point. Imam Hussein al-Islam says, maybe you've had a fight with your wife. Why don't you come to my house? I'll give you some food. I'll give you water. You stay with me. The man didn't. He was confused. He said, I don't understand. I cursed you. I cursed your father. I did this. I did this. He said, but we are Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. It's different. The point is what? I think we need to understand that akhlaq is transformative. Akhlaq is transformative. If you have good akhlaq, how was Rasulullah so effective? From Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, obviously. But because good akhlaq is magnetic. So oftentimes we don't mean to. We push people away because, I can't believe how they're dressing. No, yes, it doesn't mean that you just get away. If somebody's doing something wrong, there's a proper way to approach them. Sure. But at the same time, choose your battles. Pick and choose your battles. You don't ever want to drive someone. See, my intention may be good. Okay, this person's praying namaz. He has a lion on his shirt. Okay. Now I'm going to tell him, he's a young kid. He's standing there. Beta, you cannot do that. Is that true? Yes. It's not recommended. Okay. But it was such a struggle for him to come to the center in the first place. And now he really feels like, man, really like my shirt, my intention was good. I didn't mean to. But now he stops coming. So there's a balance. We have to be very careful. Yeah.
It reminds me of the same story of Muhammad when they were doing the wuzu. Right? And he wanted to correct this old man.
Imagine.
Yeah. And they asked him that, can you see if we are doing the wuzu right? And correct, and as soon as he was looking at it, he realized it's me. So it's all about how you approach.
Like you were saying, how did they deal with people, for example, who have questions with faith? The biggest thing is, I don't need to go and tell anyone about, hey, come to Islam, come to a school of Ahlul Bayt. If we just enact it through our akhlaq, people are going to be like, where did you learn this from? Because I was rude to you. And I'll say, okay, you didn't respond back to me. Yes, because Imam Sajjad alayhi salam taught maqaram al-akhlaq.
And one thing that I will point out, pick your battle wisely.
Absolutely.
You don't have to battle your brother.
Everything. No.
What you'll gain out of it.
Yeah.
Is that your standard that you're gonna start fight within the community for what? For your brothers who share the same faith, share the wilayat, the family.
Yeah.
Okay, if you want to fight, if you're that delayed, if you're that brave, then you just go out and fight the zalimeen who are doing the injustice, who are the real oppressors, right? So even if you're the follower, you have to pick your battles wisely. Right?
This whole conversation reminds me of a story I was 17, 18, and a friend of mine, much older than me, he's 12, 13 years older than me, and he wanted to come to a majlis. And I was like, yeah, sure, come to a majlis. So we go to a majlis. We were the first ones to get there, and I didn't know any better. I just asked one of the older guys in the community, like, hey, my friend Dave is here. But he's, a brown skinned gentleman. So he was like, what's his real name? I was like, he had told me don't say my name because they're gonna, they're not gonna let me in. I'm like, no, this community is not like that. Well, they're gonna let you in. So I didn't say his name. And then he was like, no, what's his real name? And then my friend spoke up and he's like, Devendra. And they were like, well, you can't come in. I'm like, luckily, another older guy in the community came and he was like, Devendra, take my seat. And he like had him and myself sit up right near the member. And it was like, we need more of that. We need more of acceptance. An imam barga is different than a masjid.
Sure, absolutely.
Right? There's
absolutely.
different ahkam.
Yeah, absolutely.
From a fiqh perspective even, for these things.
I mean, just look at Karbala.
Exactly.
Example of what? And there is a beautiful conversation between when he came and embraced Imam Hussein. Imam Hussein asked him, who are you? Imam knew who he was. But so he does not feel that ashamed that now I'm coming with this guilt. He said, who are you? So beautiful, so beautifully he took all the shame. So Hork does not feel that, okay, he did not recognize me. So I have a better chance of apologizing him. So it's so beautiful. I mean, it's all, in the end of the day, it's how you present.
No, and then one extension to that, in one narration I've heard, is that when he comes to Imam Hussein and Imam Hussein forgives him, he then asks Imam asks Hazrat Hur to forgive him. Says why? Because normally when a guest comes, you have something to offer. Imam says, I don't have anything to offer you in the sense of water, in the sense of that level. I've heard a narration, I don't know how accurate that may be, but I've heard that the point is what? That akhlaq is continuing. It's drowning us in that love. That how can you want to go anywhere else? And then to your point, it's excellent. How else do you bring anyone towards Islam? Yes, there is obviously there's fiqh that has to be respected for sure, but everybody should be welcome. And it's our responsibility. And I think especially if in any community, one of the things I'm saying as a reminder to myself, if you see someone who is new, especially someone who may not look like the same cultural background, go and approach them. And do it in a way it's not like, making them feel, hey man, we're here for you. Welcome. We're so happy to have you. If you need anything, please, this is your home. That person's going to want to come back. And it's because oftentimes we've heard, across the board, across the community, I don't feel welcome. How many times you hear that? Now, again, I mean, if you have one or two people who said something, I mean, the whole community cannot be, blamed on that. But it is our responsibility to always make everyone feel welcome, I think,
Yeah, and it's not just you have the guys in your mosque, and you know who those guys are that are always gonna go to the new person and welcome them, and they're gonna make them feel at home. But don't just count on those guys to just do it, right? It's everybody's responsibility to do that, right? Like maybe that person who always does that is Shirazi uncle in our community, right?
Absolutely.
So don't always count on Shirazi uncle to go up to this guy and say salam and welcome him and memorize his address and all that, right?
Or his credit card number, yeah.
Exactly. It's everybody's duty to do that.
No. And I think also within every community, and this is natural, like in school, for example, right? Like you go to the lunchroom, we have cliques. It's natural. There's no problem in that. I think it's good, not that you have to be buddy-buddy with everyone. Breaking cliques is important too. That we should feel within, again, this is any community. We're all one community. It's not this is this group and this group and that group. Yeah, I mean, it's there and that's natural and there's no problem. That's how it is in every family. That's how it is everywhere, and that has its value. But at the same time, I think again, for the youth, it happens where one of the things that'll help the youth is just making youth want to belong. Yeah. They want to feel like they belong. So the youth are always gonna look towards someone who accepts them. Well, our responsibility is to make sure that the people who are active in communities are the ones who make them feel, because you don't want them going anywhere else for guidance, for spiritual guidance, you want them coming to us.
Yeah, because they'll get the wrong advice.
Because to your point, akhlaq oftentimes is what pushes them away. They'll go to someone who's not Muslim and they'll say, why? They'll say, well, my atheist friend has better akhlaq than my Muslim or Shia or Sunni friend.
Yeah.
So it becomes very difficult. They say, look, you tell me that I need to associate with Shias, but they do X, Y, and Z, and my atheist friend is an honest guy, is a this or that. No, because Islam does have a very clear guidance on that. And the reason is because your faith, your iman, is the most precious thing that you possess. That's why Islam is very strict on that. But we have a responsibility to represent that.
I think we're also very guilty of, and this is again to your point, what you've been saying, Jafar. Like this, I'm the first one guilty of this. Sometimes the people that you're closest to, you strain those relationships more. You add more pressure to those relationships, far easier than somebody that you may have a more formal relationship with, right? So, because Adil and I are close, I could say, I can just dismiss Adil. It's just Adil. He'll understand.
Right.
Yeah, he'll understand. He'll give me the benefit of the doubt. But not every time, right? Not every time. So when I am interacting with, the guys earlier that were on the podcast, Faris and Fazal and Hashim, like I'm close to those guys. I can't just disregard their feelings just because I'm close to those guys. Because they still have a certain opinion of me. They still have certain expectation of me, a certain expectation of respect given to them, right? When we start straining those relationships by dismissing other people's feelings, that's where I think the discomfortable conversations start to arise and the division starts to arise.
The burdens, right? Yeah, absolutely. No, 100%. And I would just say for that really quickly to follow up on that, a couple of things. Joking is very you guys are my brothers. I can make a joke. Joking can be very problematic in Islam because I may say something about you. I'm joking. It hurts deep down. It hurts, and I may not even show it. So oftentimes in our communities, like nicknames is one of the things we could be very careful. We throw nicknames out at people. Yeah. Islam is it's not permissible. So it's hard. I mean, we have to be very careful. And to end, I would say the hadith that says that your brother is more sacred than the Kaaba. Yeah. I mean that's how precious they are. The sanctity has to be the same way, more so than you would respect the Kaaba. That's the believer in the eyes of Islam.
Before we let you go, Jafar, what's next for you?
Inshallah, just I think the biggest thing is really trying to focus on the hawza. By Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy, more opportunities just to benefit from scholars and benefit from the community. Just really trying to continue the studies, number one. And then just being of any service towards anyone who needs it, especially the youth. I want to focus on also doing some classes about fiqh classes, simple things, just like a class on how to do wudu, for example, more like seminars, like Homs 101, just some things, and like obviously working with the scholars, some things that we just take for granted, like we talked about, simple once a month or once every 4 or 5 months, also taboo subjects too. I think it's very important that we cover a lot of the things that's happening, and I know the Idara, among other communities, is working on that. I think I'd love to assist that and just help this progression, inshallah. So,
and lastly, as far as you've been the president for Idara for a couple of years, or you were the president of Idara for a couple of years. So there's kids in the community, there's guys in the community that look up to you as well. What's some advice that you would give to kids that are like ages 30 and younger, or in their teenage years, kind of looking up to Jafar Bhai, he was the president, he's doing well, mashallah, he has 2 kids, like they're looking up to you?
I'd say firstly, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless all of you, especially you guys are role models for me. And there's people much better to look up to, but that really means a lot. I would say number one is that we value you, we need you, you're important. You have a skill that don't ever think that you have something that we can benefit from. And like there's always areas that we can improve upon. We need and value your feedback. Every single voice is important, I want everyone to feel that they matter. I think that's the biggest thing. Don't if there's something we can improve upon, come to us, talk to us. We want to get better, and you're just as important to us as anybody else. That's one, and just working with them, I think, is the biggest thing. Just knowing how important they are, and that you can make us better. Nothing is too small. Any way that you can get involved and you can help, we'll take it. Whether it's financial, whether it's your time, whether it's your advice, whatever it is, we need you. And don't ever underestimate how valuable you are.
Yeah.
And lastly, I'm seeing on your face, but I haven't seen anybody saying anything bad about you. There's always good things being said behind your back, and I think this is
probably a lot.
I think that's one of the biggest success you can have.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think people talk good behind your back, right? So that's very important. I thank you for your time, man.
That's all from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy, and I'm sure there's it has its pros and cons. That means I maybe
you have a lot of expectations.
Yeah, I mean, maybe need to do a better job of saying people. There was, I remember one scholar said that actually if everyone praises you, there's also a problem.
And of course, you should have some haters.
But having haters can be a good thing. But no, I really, that's all from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy, and I'm not worthy of that. I want to sincerely thank you guys, man. This is such a valuable service that you're providing, and we really pray that may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continue to bless you guys, and anything you need from us, we would be honored to help you. But keep up the great work, man.
There's one sign-off question that Adil always asks, or we're starting to have Adil ask. I think it's about Azadari or something.
Yeah. So last and not least, your impact, Azza, and the impact it has on your life.
So I think what is so fundamental, and we were talking about, that connection specifically with Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, and then broader, obviously, with the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. I still don't. I'm extremely ignorant. I didn't know anything about Islam, especially when I was like a teenager growing up, like you said. But I just wanted to be in that majlis. I wanted to touch that alam. I didn't, I go, but I knew tonight's 8th Muharram. I want to be that one who carries that alam. I may not even I may not even understand fully like why I do namaz or even the tawheed, all the stuff we're talking about. But I knew, or we know, and that comes from, Allah's blessings, your parents and everything. I don't care what's happening. I don't care what's going on. There's no place I want to be on this earth other than holding the alam of Hazrat Abbas, for example, or 9th Muharram, or any. The point is what? There are people who, the scholars have said this, hold on to the azza of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. It's one of the single most important, most precious things you have. People say, why do you emphasize walayat so much? What did we say the most beautiful thing you have is your iman, your faith, your belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa. Okay. How do you have that? You have it because of the Ahlul Bayt. If it was not for the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, you would not have that belief. Where do you say you get that pure belief and understanding of Allah? It comes from the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. They're the ones who protected it. Walayat is what? Guardianship. Azza of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, what does it do? It softens your heart. It brings people who, they may not have that connection. That one day they come to Fashi Azza, it changes their life. That one day. If Azza has had such, you cannot put it into words, and that's one of the things I'm so proud of. See, Azadari is universal. I don't understand Urdu. I barely understand English, but I don't understand Urdu. But it's a universal language. Azadari is universal, man. When you hear those nohas, I grew up on Sache Bhai. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless his soul and bless all the servants of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. That's all I knew. There's a connection there. Because when you're tied to Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, you will be successful. You'll be successful. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ensures that. Because Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam gave everything. So I would say that no matter what, attend the majalis. Never stop. I'll end with this really quick, and I'm paraphrasing. There was a scholar who said, basically a scholar had come to a center, or it may have been in a village. This is a story. They were talking about the fact that he was very upset that people were coming to the center, but they weren't going inside. He sat on the member. He got very upset at them. Don't even come. You're coming all this way. The majalis of Imam Hussein is happening. You're not even coming. Don't even come. I'm paraphrasing. He goes home that night. He has a dream. Imam al-Hussein comes in his dream and says, don't ever stop my lovers from coming to see me. Even if they're coming to the door, but they're not coming in, they're still benefiting. They're still benefiting. Don't ever push them away from me. And that was not, his intention was good, of course. And I'm paraphrasing, I mean, how valid or reliable this is, I don't know, but it was a story I had heard. I hadn't read it anywhere. I don't want to, say. But the point is what? That connection to Imam al-Hussein is essential. Now, there's so much more that we can take off of that, but I'll say, if it was not for Azadari, I mean, that's my whole life, every Ashura was in Idara, except for just 2 years ago. That was the first time in my life, when you ask me, what is Ashura? It's Idara's schedule. That's all I knew. That's all I know. I cannot imagine it any other way. So, may Allah bless you guys so much.
That's a beautiful note to end on. Thank you so much for your time, Jafar. I really, really appreciate it for you coming all the way down to Virginia and giving us your time. Like I said earlier, this is no blowing smoke or anything. Really appreciate you. You're a leader in our community. A lot of people look up to you. A lot of older guys that, like myself, that are older than you also look up to you. So please keep up what you're doing and be an active member in our community and be a leader in our community. And inshallah, we benefit further from your studies at the Hawza.
I want to thank you guys so much. I look up to each and every one of you as well. There's role models a million times better, but we really need something like this. And the fact that you guys are providing it is truly a barakat from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I thank you and look up to both of you very much so, inshallah. Thank you so much, inshallah.
Inshallah, we'll be back with a future episode on AZH podcast, and we'll see you guys soon.